Iran's new kill list is out, and this time, even hotels are marked for death. Tehran's message is chilling: if you house them, you become them. US troops are running out of places to hide, and even Trump didn't see this list coming. From 5-star suites to field lodgings, every American foothold is now a target. Iran warns it will bomb Gulf hotels sheltering US soldiers on the run. Amid escalating tensions and open warfare between the United States and Iran, Tehran has issued a fresh and chilling warning to Washington. Iranian military officials have declared that hotels or facilities housing US soldiers will be treated as legitimate targets in the event of further conflict. In a bold statement, Iran's armed forces spokesperson said, "When all the Americans go into a hotel, that hotel becomes American," signaling that no safe spaces remain for US troops across the region. Abolfazl Shekarchi said, and I quote, "When all the Americans' forces go into a hotel, then from our perspective that hotel becomes American. Should we just stand by and let the Americans strike us? When we respond, naturally, we have to strike wherever they are," unquote. Iran's military spokesman, Abolfazl Shekarchi, says Tehran is now closely tracking the movement and deployment of US forces across the entire region. In a recent interview, he claimed that the American military structure in West Asia has collapsed in the shortest possible time, following waves of Iranian attacks on key bases. Shekarchi used the platform to sharply criticize US actions while laying out Iran's strategy for responding to the growing tensions and continued military presence. He further alleged that many US personnel have already abandoned several damaged bases and are now taking shelter in civilian hotels, which he condemned as using civilian spaces as a protective shield. Abolfazl Shekarchi said, and I quote, "The Americans, who once relied on their military bases to establish a presence, are now hiding in hotels and relying on the civilian areas of our region as a protective shield. This marks a humiliating retreat and an admission of their inability to defend themselves. We have dismantled 17 US bases in the region, and they have failed to protect their forces or their installations," unquote. Iran has stressed that despite the intense fighting, Tehran believes it is still maintaining control and initiative in the ongoing confrontation with the United States and Israel. Shekarchi pointed to the deployment of advanced military technology and air defense systems, claiming these capabilities have been used to track and target cutting-edge aircraft such as US F-35 jets. He warned that Iran will retaliate against any foreign forces that use the region's land or airspace to launch attacks, vowing to respond wherever threats against Iran originate. In his message, Shekarchi also urged Muslim nations to oppose the US-Israeli military presence in West Asia and to stop providing shelter or support to their forces. Shekarchi said, and I quote, "We have not been on the defensive. We have been on the offensive from the beginning, and we will continue to lead the conflict until we achieve our objectives. Our capabilities are growing stronger by the day, and we are constantly improving our military systems to ensure that we can meet any challenge. We call on the Muslim nations of the region to stop providing shelter to US forces. We respect the sovereignty of all countries, and we do not seek to impose our will on anyone. However, if you allow foreign forces to use your land and airspace for military operations against Iran, you will bear the consequences. The land and airspace of the Muslim world are sacred to us, and we do not seek to harm anyone. However, if foreign forces use these lands to attack us, we will retaliate accordingly. The world is beginning to see that the US is no longer the dominant power it once was. Even in the face of the most intense military pressure, our economy has held up. We have faced challenges, but our resolve has only strengthened. The Iranian people are united, and they will not be broken. We are confident that in the long run, the global community will shift its stance on the US and its aggressive policies. The US and Israel are mistaken if they think we will back down. Our resolve is stronger than ever, and we will continue to fight until we achieve our objectives. We will not stop until the American and Israeli forces are removed from the region, and until our conditions are met." Unquote. He reiterated that Iran will continue its fight until all US and Israeli forces are pushed out of the region, framing their complete withdrawal as a non-negotiable goal. Iranian attacks have heavily damaged multiple US military bases across West Asia, according to reports, dealing a serious blow to American infrastructure in the region. These sustained strikes have forced US troops to abandon several key bases and operate instead out of hotels and other temporary locations, often far from the front lines. As a result, much of Washington's land-based military effort in the Gulf is now being conducted remotely, relying on improvised command centers and dispersed teams. Bases used by U.S. forces in Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia have been described as all but uninhabitable due to the scale of the damage inflicted in recent waves of attacks. All this is unfolding as Donald Trump, in a cabinet meeting in Washington on Thursday, acknowledged that Iran was very smart actually in how it has responded, even as his administration scrambles to adjust its strategy.
This morning I want to give an update on the Operation Epic Fury, which is an appropriate name because we are absolutely obliterating them. Over the past 3 weeks, we've been hitting Iran's military capabilities at a level that few people have ever seen before. People never knew there was such a capability. We have the strongest military anywhere in the world by far. I built it during my first administration, and I used it during my second administration. Unfortunately, because I'd rather not have to use it. But it's a display of force and precision and skill like nothing the world has really witnessed, although you got a pretty good witnessing of it in Venezuela also. That was a smaller version of what we're doing now. We're crushing their missiles and drone stockpiles, destroying the defense industrial base. We've wiped out their Navy completely, their Air Force completely. We've wiped out a large percentage of their missiles. And the missile launchers, without the launchers, the missiles don't do any good. And we've knocked out probably close to 90% of the launchers, probably more than 90% of the missiles themselves. Between some they fired and more than they fired, we knocked out. We've also destroyed a lot of the factories. We're continuing to do that, but a lot of the factories where they manufacture the drones and the missiles. The drones, too, are way down, but the reason they're down is they go one way and they don't come back, because for the most part we're shooting them down. But we also are able to, we've really done tremendous damage to the places where they make them. And just so we set the record straight, because I've been watching the Wall Street Journal's fake news and all these stories that get printed like, oh, I want to make a deal. They are begging to make a deal, not me. They're begging to make a deal. And anybody that saw what was happening over there would understand why they want to make a deal. But they say, oh, we're not talking to them. Anybody would know they're talking. And only a total fool. And they're not fools. They're very smart, actually, in a certain way. And they're great negotiators. I say they're lousy fighters, but they're great negotiators. They are begging to work out a deal. I don't know if we'll be able to do that. I don't know if we're willing to do that. They should have done that 4 weeks ago. They should have done it 2 years ago. Or they should have done it when we first came into office, because 2 years ago they had free reign under Biden. Sleepy Joe, worst president in the history of our country. When he allowed to happen to our country at the borders, and even with a thing like this. But not just him. Every president for 47 years, every president should have done this. They should have done it a long time ago, because you cannot give lunatics a nuclear weapon, and they would have had a big one. It stopped really when we did the B-2, but even before that, the Barack Hussein Obama, what he did where he gave them the Iran nuclear deal, gave them free will toward a nuclear weapon. Basically, he chose Iran over Israel and others that didn't want him to do it. But I terminated that deal. Had I not terminated that deal, you would have had a nuclear weapon years ago and it would have been used, guaranteed. And one of the reasons you know about the guarantee is because their neighbors were sort of like bystanders. They weren't involved very much. They didn't choose heavy sides. They didn't want to, because people were concerned with Iran. There was a big black cloud over the Middle East. They were concerned, but all of a sudden the war starts, and they start shooting at these five countries. They start shooting at Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Oman. They start shooting at them, and everybody was shocked, including us. You know why? Because they're sick, and they had a plan to take over the Middle East. And some of those missiles that were shot at them were locked long before we even started this process. They were locked and loaded and aimed at those countries. They wanted to take over the Middle East. but we happened to come along, so it wasn't so easy. So right now their Navy is sunk in the largest elimination of a foreign Navy that has taken place, maybe ever, but certainly since World War II. Their Air Force is gone. Their anti-aircraft and communications capabilities are totally dismantled. And one of the problems they do have when they deal with us is we deal with people and the people aren't able to communicate with anybody else. So, because all of their leadership has been gone. The first level is gone, and they met to pick a new level, and they're gone. They're all gone because they didn't make a deal, and because they're sick people. They're really sick. They're really sinister, sick people. And if anybody thinks it was okay to have a group of people like this to have nuclear capability, nuclear weapons, and if we didn't attack with the B-2 bombers, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks of that, maybe 4 weeks. But between 2 and 4 weeks, they were planning to have a nuclear weapon. If we didn't hit them at that time with the B-2 bombers, and one of the great air raids in history, maybe the greatest, dark at night, no moon, no light, every single bomb hit its mark and just obliterated that place. So it's now buried deep under earth. And it was an amazing thing, but they would have a nuclear, and they would have used it without question. And you know that because why did they shoot all these countries that weren't even really involved with them? They weren't involved. They had no big problems because they're sick, because they want to take over the Middle East, not just Israel. Certainly Israel would have been the first on their list. They would have used nuclear weapons, a nuclear, you don't need too many of them, but they would have used a nuclear weapon on Israel, and they would have used it on the neighbors, and then they would have come after us. And if we had a weak president, they would have done great damage. But fortunately, you don't have a weak president.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.